introduce you. Okay, welcome. Welcome to the international panel of the forum, the Urban Regeneration Forum of Milano. Unfortunately, the strike will start again soon, so many participants of the before panel left us. So we are few, but we have an online connection. We are in streaming, so probably most of the people is following this event online. I'm glad to introduce you the Milano-Barcelona-Athens conversation on climate-responsive urban regeneration that will be moderated by Hélène Chartier, Director Urban Planning and Design for C40 cities. And we have the pleasure to have with us today Laia Bonnet, the Deputy Mayor of Barcelona, in charge of urban planning, ecological transition, urban services. She's the Vice Mayor and housing. Together with, we have the pleasure also to have here with us Maro Evangelidou, the Vice Mayor of Athens, we in charge of urbanism and mobility, right? And of course, our Deputy Mayor in charge of urban regeneration, Giancarlo Tancredi. No Vice Mayor, no Vice Mayor. So thank you for being here, and Hélène, I leave you the floor for this amazing panel.
Oh yes, okay. That started in Milan 2 days ago. We speak about public space transformation, and we thought it was a good introduction to the session. So let's maybe start. So today for this session, we will discuss about climate responsive urban planning. And we will discuss across the 3 cities. So we know that urban planning is not a sector, an emission sector per se. When cities and nations, they report on their GHG emissions, they don't report about urban planning. They report on buildings, they report on transport. But actually, we know there is a lot of evidence saying that the way we plan the city will really define the way cities are going to respond to the climate crisis. And in that sense, urban planning is a cross-cutting enabler of emission reduction and climate resilience. The IPCC report, so the Bible, I would say, of climate experts, estimate that by adopting a good urban planning model, cities could reduce their emission by approximately 25% by 2050. In some part of the world, especially, for example, in North America, in the US, they even estimate that adopting a good land use policies and especially limiting urban sprawl could be the most effective policies that the cities can take in the US. So where the emissions come from when we speak about urban planning? They come from transport. Of course, a well-designed city will reduce the travel need, will also support people to use more active or public transport mode. And they also come from building, because when you have a more compact city, you have directly smaller housing unit, shared wall, and we know actually that shared walls are very effective way to reduce emission from the energy. They also come from the land that you don't consume and that capture emissions, sequester emissions. So if you add all of these different sectors, a good urban planning could reduce a lot of emission. And a lot of things are happening. We see national government, regional government trying to take action on these. The French government, for example, where I come from, just passed a new rules to limit to target net zero consumption land. We see in Portland, for example, that they just create an urban boundary to stop the urban sprawl. But we also know that maybe the most effective way of pushing in this direction is to create livable, desirable city where people want and can live. And I would say for this, we know what are the ingredients, and people know and they tell to the politician what are the key ingredients. They want to have affordable housing for everyone. They want to have amenities, transport services next to where they live, which is what make city life, thriving, I would say. They want also to have access to green space, because we know the well-being of the people is conditioned by the access to green space. And they want also, they don't have their own garden, but they want a public space where they can meet, their children can play, they can socialize and everything. But let's be honest, today we don't necessarily go in the right direction. What we are describing here, it looks more like the old European cities or historical cities. But we all know in the middle of the past century, the way we were planning the cities has been totally transformed. More functional transformation, but also car-oriented transformation. And it has created a lot of the problems cities are facing today. And even today, we are still not going in the good direction. We know that the urban population globally will explode, but it's even worse because we know that the size of the urban area is growing 50% faster than the population. So we are totally fueling today again this bad model. That being said, I would say there is hope. There is hope because we could see from, for example, from my point of view, from C40, we can see a lot of city leaders now really trying to reverse, if I can say, reverse this model and try to defend and to implement a better model of design and urban planning in their cities. But we know what needs to be done, but the real problem is it's not easy. It's not politically easy. It's not financially easy. It's not technically easy. So what we will discuss today with Milan, with Barcelona and Athens is how they are doing it, or how we can really make this transformation happen. And maybe before I stop talking, I just wanted to start with just one slide showing a little bit the profile of the three cities we will discuss and that we'll discuss today. So we can see that the three very typical European cities, they have a lot of similar situation. If you look, the metropolitan area is approximately the same number of inhabitants, more or less 4 million. Dense city overall with a sprawling metropolitan area. The main difference is maybe the size of the city within the metropolitan scope. So it's Milan, for example, is quite an important part of the metropolis, while Athens is quite a smaller part of the metropolis. But I stop here, and we will start our discussion because I think it's going to be much more interesting. So we organize the discussion in three main parts. And we will start with the land use policy, the master plan, and how the city can use master plan to really embed the priorities, the action they have identified in their climate action plan into legally binding policies and things. And for this, I will start by giving you the floor. And I think, we start with Milano, I'm sorry. Just if you could, Giancarlo, just briefly introduce a little bit the thinking that are happening right now with the transformation of the PGT.
Okay. The new city plan, the PGT, addressed the environmental challenges across all the main strategies, placing them at the center of the city policies and planning the needs of the communities. There are several tools that we are putting in place. The goal is to structure the green networks by innovating the city neighborhoods in order to improve the quality of citizens' life. Climate actions are designed both at the scale of buildings, both at the neighborhood scale. In addition to the Neighborhood Atlas, which is a new tool for the city of Milan capable of redefining the role of proximity services, the main policies are: one, encourage reuse versus demolition, according to two different approaches. One, map of the industrial archaeology buildings to be preserved, conservation about 70% of the existing buildings and the facade. And two, reduce the fees and externalities for those projects to keep the existing structure of buildings. And another approach, ask for every new project tangible outputs in terms of climate reduction index, active ground floors, and mixed use. About the RIC, the climate reduction index, it is all about adding presence of trees and ecosystem output instead of only permeable surfaces. Today, the RIC is only focused on surfaces.
Maybe Barcelona, you would like to share a quick introduction also?
Yes, when we talk about master plan, actually the Metropolitan General Plan in Barcelona was approved back in 1976, so it's an old plan.
It's a very old plan.
And this plan regulates land use in Barcelona and its surrounding area, the metropolitan area. However, for us, even if it's an old plan, the problem is not that much or not so much with the general plan, but about how we bring this plan into reality. We have up to 100 hectares in Barcelona, in the city, that are qualified as green spaces in our general plan, but that we have still not developed as green spaces. But maybe it's easy to think of big spaces such as parks or non-urbanized areas. It's not that big. Barcelona is a very compact city. We have seen the figures. Practically the entire city is a consolidated urban fabric. So we have few big spaces left for building new streets or facilities. What we do have are spaces which we like to call leftovers. So they are actually small pieces, such as block interiors, parking lots in between buildings, plots of land, rooftops, or dividing walls that are awaiting transformation. And they are spaces that are very close to us, so in our proximity, and we walk past them every day, but we do not notice them. We see them every day, but we really do not notice them. However, they have a great potential for creating new green spaces without having to modify the general plan. And that is what we are focusing on right now. We recently presented our proximity spaces program, which is our roadmap for implementing climate urbanism, what we call climate urbanism, across the whole city in each of our 10 neighborhoods. With this program, we aim at mobilizing these 100 hectares to make these leftover spaces healthier, greener, and better adapted to the climate emergency. We are not just making these spaces greener, we are adapting them also to the heat by, for instance, using shade structures as the one you see on the right part of the screen. I will explain more about this later for sure. What I think is interesting about this program is that we are not talking about big iconic transformations, which we are also doing, of course, but about these anonymous spaces that are close to people and that can improve the way we experience the city in our daily lives and in the spaces that are closer to us. That's the way we focus on the green on the city.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this snapshot of the priority. You would like, I pass you. directly to pass your slide. What?
Everybody, thank you very much, for inviting me, and thank you, Milan, to accept us as you did already. So the land use, the master plan, the PL local plan, how do you call it in every country, is just to our perception in Greece, is just a rule plan. It's not. It doesn't have incorporated the concept of management of the urban. It's just giving the rules and that people is obliged to follow. Of course, there is a green spaces which are public and you have to manage in another way. I will speak better on that. So the big question is, how can you pass in having a more active, the local authorities having a more active role in this, but it's not very obvious. Here, one of the questions that we have faced, one of the first questions we have to face when we took the municipality, which was this year, it's the question of the high buildings. So there was a big, and there is it's still open, a big question on the highs, because there was a central law who gave the right to the buildings to have some floors more than what was institutionalized by the previous planning. So it was an horizontal law for all the country, and at in a certain moment there was an initiative by an NGO because of a building close to Acropolis who was hiding half Acropolis, and it was a good example to have an international campaign on that. So there was, and it still is, a legal dispute about that, instead of having a question on planning, how to plan and how to proceed. But anyway, for the moment, we are, I think we are optimistic that we can continue. We can have a good result on the decision we took of applying the previous high levels, and we have based on the state, the Council of the State statement, which was saying that planning is obligatory and you have to follow the planning rules and not creating horizontal rules for all the city without passing by the procedure of planning. This is very interesting. That is the court saying that instead of the Ministry of Planning. It's really a very strange, I think, story, but it will be interesting to know the result. The question of over-tourism is just because we need to have answers. We have had some this morning from Barcelona, but the big question is how you enhance the land use rules by putting limits, by considering the saturations as a question to deal with, because in normal cases the question which is considered important for the private sector is, do you permit me or not? If you permit me, I can do whatever. If you not, tell me and I'll go other wells. And no one from the political are saying, no, you don't build, for example, hotels in small islands. There is another big problem on that. So let's speak about this very obvious question about the green. How do you manage the green corridors in city in order to influence the climate evolution? So this is one of the plans we're doing when I was working in the Metropolitan Agency. But the big question is how you pass from the strategic level, which is just the direction or the idea, how you pass to the more active and concrete. And so here we have a big problem of how expropriate, how to gain the green spaces, not to manage or to make them function, but how to buy them, how to have them. So you see, we have a big problem of, let's say, spatial inequality. You see that the northwestern part of Athens is really has much less green space. So the question we are trying to deal after is that. So sorry, I have finished.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So I will speak.
And I have a follow-up question for you, because you, so in your presentation, Laia Bonnet, you mentioned the climate urbanism, which is a very interesting approach. And could you elaborate a little bit more on how do you integrate urbanism and sustainable mobility in Barcelona?
Yes, I was talking about climate urbanism, and this concept for us has to do with bringing green and healthy spaces closer to people, but also about transforming the city in a way that prioritizes sustainable mobility. For us, it's quite simple. If we want people to move by public transport, by foot, by bike, everything is sustainable mobility. We need to make sure these modes of transport are prioritized when we design the city. This means ensuring there are enough bus lanes, for example, or making metro stations more accessible. It also means expanding bike lane infrastructure, or making it safer. Or making sidewalks wider, pedestrianizing streets and reducing the maximum speed to 30 kilometers per hour, for example, to make streets safer for everyone, and especially for children. However, I would like to highlight something here, because in cities that are very complex as ours, rigid solutions do not work. So we need to introduce also some kind of flexibility, or having into account the characteristics of the city, or of every place or area in the city. An interesting learning from the past years in Barcelona is that if we want to put people before cars, we need to boost sustainable mobility. To create real alternatives and incentives for people to stop using cars. For example, we need to make sure people are able to use buses without losing commercial speed, so that the bus is a real alternative when we move in the city every day. We cannot simply pedestrianize every street, because if we do it, probably we lose mobility or alternatives in terms of mobility. We need to see and to evaluate the impacts on public transport when we pedestrianize, because we need to do it, but we need also to preserve also sustainable mobility, and public transport above all. We must look at the city as a whole when we design the city, when design streets. And this is probably one of the learnings that we have after a lot of years of transforming the city, that shows us how to have a better city, but that means implementing different solutions considering the differences of every area in the city.
Thank you. A little bit the same question for you, Giancarlo Tancredi, because how do you envision that the new PGT will contribute to this reduction of car dependency and promoting the sustainable mobility?
Sustainable mobility is is at the center of our strategies now and for the future. And in new PGT and in this new tool that you can see in the exposition, the neighborhood atlas, we try to reduce road surfaces and to reconvert oversized mobility infrastructures into the new public spaces and the linear park. As you can see in the flagship project that we are proposing now, the main part of these projects are projects of sustainable mobility and are in PGT. Like, urbanism and mobility are strongly strengthened, integrated for us now and for the future, and more for the future.
And we were discussing yesterday, and you are about to start also the revision of your master plan in Athens. I know also in a collaboration with the national government. And I know that the new mayor and yourself, who have been just elected, it's also one of the priority to do this reduce car dependency and everything. How you will work on both?
The first thing I'll start with is the land use. Here you have this beige color is what we call general housing,
okay.
Which means that there are housing areas, but were permitted a lot of other uses. This is the mescolade that you talked this morning, and this is a concrete for Athens. This makes possible the 15 minutes distance in every, but at the same time it makes difficult the moving because we don't have enough transport. So the moving for the job, because it's obvious the job is not always close to the in an agglomeration like that, close to your house. So the big, to my opinion, the big question is how to gain using the trees we have in Athens in the streets, because we have streets, we have trees planted at the beginning of the Novecento, the previous century. And now they are a problem because they are moving the sidewalk. They're you know the kind of problems, and this needs an intervention in a more focused level in order to enlarge the sidewalk and take out space from the parking, take out space from the two direction movings of the car, and so on. This is the level we can work with, because and the important is to collaborate with the state entities for mobility, for the mass how do you say, media, the transport. And what we are trying, a project that we have proposed and has to be discussed with these central entities, is the the creating parks around the city in big metro stations, in this idea of doors, of gates to the city, and to apply a very obvious policy which is not applied, just park and ride, a very old policy, but we are going to reinvent now. And we're trying to. It's not obvious that it will be accepted. The big problem is that we don't own land in these cases. And I will show you the examples later, but it's. I think we don't have the power to discuss with the public and the private sector, because the public, I mean the central, the government, because we don't have land to talk about.
Maybe to shift a bit the discussion also on another point, your 3 cities are Mediterranean cities. You are already experimenting extreme heat wave during the summer, now even sometime outside the summer. How, and I will start with you because you already mentioned it a little bit, how, you were explaining the strategy you are trying to deploy in using every small land that you have to increase, a solution to fight this extreme heat. How effective it is, how you do it?
As I said, Barcelona is a very compact city, and that is why another important line of action of our proximity space program is about adapting public spaces to the new climate conditions. So we have to consider always this need of adaptation when we design also the future city. It's not only about greening, which is the first part that I mentioned earlier. It's about making it more comfortable in a context of rising temperatures. We do not want anyone to stop using public spaces or playing in it because of the heat. And that is why we are focusing on creating more shade in our public space. We are doing it both with more trees, obviously. We do have trees also, like in Athens, but we do it also with more trees, but also with shade structures where trees cannot be planted. We are focusing on areas used by our vulnerable residents, such as schools or playgrounds, especially. And we aim at building more than 200 shade structures across the city during the next 3 years. And another thing we are doing is rethinking our pavement. Because if we talk about strategies for cooling, the pavement is also important. On the one hand, we want to depave some streets to bring temperatures down and to ensure our soils are more permeable to better collect groundwater. And on the other hand, we have redesigned our iconic tile. I don't know if you have been ever in Barcelona. Our iconic tile has a sort of flower. We call it panot. And we have redesigned this style to make it with materials that are more sustainable, that help to reduce the temperature and that generate less emissions when being made also. That is also our plan for our public space. But beyond our streets, we are also worried about ensuring comfort of those who are most vulnerable to climate change, such as children, so students in the schools. And that is why we came up with our climate school plan and our climate shelters network. With the climate school plan, we will climatize 170 schools until 2030, with 100 million euro coming from the touristic tax. So we use the money given by the tourists, the visitors in Barcelona, to climatize schools. And our climate shelters network consists of 350 facilities such as libraries, community centers, or markets, which are open to the public during the warmest months, with water to drink and places to rest. So it's some of the strategies we are doing to tackle the heat in Barcelona.
This is very inspiring. This morning we had a meeting with the city of Athens discussing this type of topic, so I think it will resonate a lot. And maybe the same question also for you, Giancarlo, because I know that in the PGT you are also including land use policies that also aim at reducing not only heat wave but also flooding, which is also an issue in Milan. Can you share with us a little bit more on this?
Yes. We give part of the answer in the requests of the climate reduction index in the PGT, differentiated according to the climate vulnerability zones. We are developing maps that highlight areas with high climate criticality, for example, heat islands and risk of floods. In these areas, the RIC requests will increase. And another small contribution by increasing the unbuildable areas along rivers and streams. Today, the law demands only 10 meters this distance. We believe that all streams and rivers need more breathing spaces precisely to cope with a greater flow during extreme climatic events, floods. And we therefore ask those who develop in an area along the river edge to make room for water, to give more space to the margin of respect of the river. This, together with the issue of the paving, is obviously one of the strategies to be implemented.
And Maro, I know Athens actually has been really pioneer in this strategy of fighting urban heat. I think a lot of cities learned from your initial strategy. What are the next stage, and especially, I think so, yes. and how this is, you are leading on urban planning, how this is also resonate and you will integrate in your in the revision of your master plan.
We are sharing the strategy, the climate strategy, then the resilience strategy, elaborated on 2015, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, during Legnombi revealing.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Yes, I see. But it's not casual that it has been stocked. The strategy is somewhere is waiting for us to use it, because the rest of the after this effort there was the crisis, and the crisis was transformed. We didn't took the occasion to of the COVID period and so on to change our mentalities and to create integrated policies. Although, just not to say only the negative things, we are all this discussion about schools, climate design schools, and changing the way to work with the public space and so on are there. We are trying to use them. There is a risk that if you don't have an integrated approach and you go in a square, you just change the carrelage, the pavement, and to buy from another productor, which is cool one. It's you didn't gain the problem, you didn't address the problem. There is this risk, and to tell the truth, much money, there is a protest also against that. Much money has been spent in that way. In all, I mean, I speak for in general, not only for Athens, but in many cities. Okay, we are now at the beginning of the plan, the GPT, how do you say it? I don't know. It
PGT.
Just starting. We are next month. We are going to speak about the alternative strategies and the alternative scenarios we have to follow. And so we are still in analysis phase. But anyway, the strategy also is in the climate strategy is a very initial phase. So to combine them, it's the big issue, and we'll try to do it. Let's use also our good examples here around.
Thank you. We discussed about. Sorry, we discussed that before. This idea of, I think that we don't want any more cities that have, a form of land specialization, zoning for residential area, zoning for commercial. We want this form of organic cities where everyone in every neighborhood can find this type of amenities that make the life. And you mentioned it already. So let's go. Zoom in, a little bit more and go to the neighborhood scale, and maybe if you could present us a little bit quickly where we are, a little bit how you approach this proximity planning, this neighborhood approach of urban transformation, maybe starting with Milan. Giancarlo.
The neighborhood atlas. It is the extended project for the public city of the new plan, that is built on the local scale of the neighborhoods by rethinking their spaces and the relationships. It designs a new overall infrastructure for the spaces of urban welfare, and it integrates forecasts of expansion, transformation, and reorganization of public services, greenery, and mobility, and strengthening the proximity geographies and the central places in the widespread spaces of the neighborhoods. And the Atlas favors three main objectives. One, the expansion of ecological and environmental networks within the built fabrics to regenerate the built environment and rebalance the urban microclimate. Two, the diffusion of living spaces and civic networks to increase social activities, the proximity economy, and the neighborhood's centrality. And three, the transformation of mobility spaces to guarantee conditions of safety, livability, and adequate quality of urban spaces for pedestrians and cyclists, and promoting social aggregation. We think the Atlas is the driver with which the new plan directs the expected outcomes of the urban regeneration processes in the building fabrics and in the spaces for public services and of public or general interest. And it defines the priorities of intervention of the administration, directing the purposes of the urbanization charges, and providing a strategic guide for the allocation of resources. And it supports the role of the municipality in the phases of recognition of the requests of local scale, and in the planning of public works. It promotes forms of involvement of the inhabitants. And the Atlas defines the projects, the flagship projects that you can see, that are 2 for each municipality. We have now 9 municipalities in the city, and 19 flagship projects.
That's the exhibition that you can see.
You can see 10 of the main 10 projects.
Deputy Mayor Maro, we know that it's also the neighborhood, the proximity approach is also very important in Athens.
Yes, that's the idea. The idea is to create in each municipality, you say, in community. We have 7 communities to create this. To work with this idea of 15 minutes walk to relate the stations, the schools, the important the squares and so on, and to create the possibility to have the walking distance done, because if you cannot walk, if you you don't apply this, but we are still in the start of this idea. So okay, that's the concept is we are working on the concept. Which is important is to add the parking policy I said before, because we have really, since we are the center of the agglomeration, we have people coming from other municipalities around, even from the banlieue, in private car, and so we have to stop this, and which is not easy in order to create the local facility. So this is, I have some example on only one example, the Plato Academy neighborhood, which is a popular neighborhood at the west of Athens, and this is the way we are working on changing the planning in order to create more green space. And this is another case which is interesting. It's on the part I show you where there is no much green space. So this is an ex-industrial zone which has been urbanized on the base of the new law. It was on the 80s that when you urbanize, the owners are obliged to give some proportion of the space, of the green space, so in order to avoid the expropriation. And that's the case. But to my opinion, the problem is that it's not well organized. Okay, we have some 40% of the area as green space, but okay. Anyway, we are after many years, it is now institutionalized the plan, and we have to go to the application. You don't have.
Before, yeah, I think before there was the study of Barcelona, and the same maybe question.
Sorry.
From you, Laia, Bonnet. Sorry, this one.
Okay. I think when we speak about public space and resilience, there is a place in Barcelona that is really important, and I would explain a little about it. It's the seafront. Barcelona is a city with a very important seafront, and as a Mediterranean city, Barcelona is very exposed to the impacts of climate change. So we have to, when we think of the future of the city, we need to think on how to adapt the seafront to those changes. That means that the rising sea level, for example, and the sea storms will increasingly affect our beaches, promenades, on ports. And it means that we need to rethink these spaces so we can continue to use them. We have recently announced that we will be adapting one of our promenades in the seafront to make it more resilient. In fact, the wall that separates this promenade from the beach and the sea was broken just 1 year ago by 2 storms, which also remove all the sand from the beach. And this is story that we have almost every year. We did some urgency works to reconstruct the wall and to refill the sand, but we wanted to go further. We commissioned a projection of the sea dynamics in 2050 and 2080, which showed us that we needed to pull the wall back to protect our beach. And that is what we will be doing. We will rebuild the wall 20 meters backwards into the city to give the sea more space to develop its natural flow. And we will use this opportunity to completely transform the promenade, which today is almost a desert space, into a space for walking, playing, and doing sport. Even if climate change urges us to change our city to make it more resilient, we don't want to give up on what makes our city unique. And that is our seafront and our beaches. But we need to think not only in tomorrow, but in 20 years in front of us, the next generations. We still want our residents to use these spaces for leisure or sport. And if we want to do it for the coming decades, we have no option, and we have to adapt. And adapt these spaces means resilience.
Sorry, maybe Deputy Maro, just to come back to you about you were explaining this proximity approach that you are developing. We know the public space is the common good where people meet and everything. Did you started also this transformation on the public space and revolution that we have seen in several cities across Europe?
We didn't start. What we are trying to elaborate is how to deliberate the public space from the car. Yeah. And which was the question here, and I was very interesting this morning to speak also with Maria. I don't remember the name. Arianna. And so the idea is to create for the neighborhoods buildings either down the how do you say sous-sol? Underground or upground for the inhabitants, to follow not the habitat, the housing, to follow the house in order to convince people that public space is not for the car, as you don't put out your laundry, you don't put out your car. So it will be hard to convince, but we are trying to work with, starting by some public spaces to see what we can transform on that. That's, I think, the most strong tool that we can use to liberate public space and go on this idea of changing the equilibrium between build and free space.
And this is something that in Barcelona you have, I would say, an extensive experience. Study the impact of this public space transformation, especially in terms of health, well-being. Is there any learning you would like to share?
Yes, if we compare Barcelona to other Spanish cities, Barcelona is one of the most walkable cities in Spain, I mean. We are, I would say, already a 15-minute city. You were talking about this. And our residents' mobility habits prove it. 40% of the trips done daily inside Barcelona are done by foot. 40%. This is a lot. And 34% of the trips are done through public transport. So 40% by foot, 34% by public transport, and almost 4% are done by bike. Only 19% are done by private vehicles. So it's a good mix. It could be better, and we need to improve it. But it's a good point of start if it's not the start. If we want to go further from these figures to ensure people are able to move around in a convenient, affordable, and accessible way, what do we have to do? I think doing this means probably that we need to increasingly reduce space for cars, for private vehicles, while we implement ambitious measures to improve air quality. That means the low emission zone. Yeah. In fact, it has been proven that the low emission zone in Barcelona, approved in 2019, works. And works in terms of encouraging the renewal of vehicles. Today in Barcelona, more than 15% of the circulating private vehicle fleet have zero or eco labels. In 2017, so 6 years ago, it was only 4%. So in 6 years, the figures have changed a lot. But it also means that we need to invest in clean public transport, both at the city and at the metropolitan scale. For instance, we are about to launch the extension of our tramway that will be in next week, probably, or in 2 weeks, which will eventually cross the whole city and connect the city with the metropolitan area. And I think the way we prioritize people and sustainable mobility matters. It makes the difference. This is not a war against cars. This is about sustainable mobility, climate change, and making or possible transformation of our cities in terms of adaptation to the climate change. And that brings me to the big challenge that we have now, the metropolitan mobility. Here is where we have a real challenge, because we have a good mix of mobility, as I said, inside the city. But the problem is that if we don't have a real alternative in terms of public transport to get the city, to come to the city, it doesn't work. And that means public transport, it means park and rides, and a lot of things that need funding and competences that are not in our hands, but in the regional and the national level.
And Giancarlo, in Milan, you have been advancing, I would say, this agenda also through tactical urbanism approach with the Piazza Aperte program, for example. Do you believe this approach is effective? And how do you transition from this experimental project to a more lasting paradigm in mobility and public space?
I would say that in Milan we have the same problem than in Barcelona. We have a good public transport in the city, and we have and there's a big difference with the public transport in metropolitan cities is the same, and is a strong challenge. And about the tactical urbanism and the Piazze Aperte, the open square, I don't know the name in English, but has been a great success for our city. It creates momentum, and now other cities, Italian cities, but also European cities are looking at it with enthusiasm. In order to do a step forward, I believe we should enlarge the perspective, because the Piazze Aperte are temporary piazze, the temporary squares. And in the project of Atlas, a first attempt to add an intermediate scale towards the change of perspective, not only temporary but definitive squares and public spaces.
Yes, of course.
One thing that I forgot to tell you is that we are trying with the authority of the public transportation to ask the prolongement, how do you say, the
Extension.
The extension of the working hours, especially on weekend. What time is it closing, the metro here or in Barcelona? What's the question? Because I remember Bilbao and is all around open the weekend at least, and it's full of young people. In Athens, young people is waiting to take the first in the morning at 5 o'clock instead of because it stops at 2 o'clock. I don't know what time is it closing here in Milan and Barcelona.
In Barcelona, it's closing at 12, and from Monday till Thursday. On Friday at 2. On Saturday, it's 24 hours. So that
the underground? No, I don't understand.
L'orario.
There's a time.
I think at 1 p.m. Yes.
1 a.m.
1 a.m. Every day of the week. Yes.
There is no difference.
But in case of special events, concerts, or we can have 1 hour more than.
My opinion is very important for at least for a city like Athens, which is a nocturne city. It's important and it's simple. It seems to be simple, but the agency dealing with that, it says no space for repair. We're repairing the trains, the workers, and so on, and they have problems. They put problems in front. But I think it will be, if we achieve that, it will be a big, good step for the city.
And we know that to shift the mobility, it's a package of mobility that needs, and public transport is one of, definitely an important one. I just would like to come back a little bit. Again, you are the Mediterranean model. We know that the public space is for mobility, but it's also for living. Children outside, old people outside discussing and everything. And why this is so important, and how you also create this space where people can stay, socialize. Maybe Laia, you want to start?
Yes, I really agree. Public and open spaces are our living rooms. The photo you have on the right side, this one is, I think, the best example. It's like it's public space, but it's a place to stay. Simply, it's easy. It's easy to imagine that it's a part of our homes, our houses. Exactly. And I always say, like to say that the public space is where we come across those who are different from us, and where we learn to live together. So it's important to have those spaces, not just to walk, but to stay. And that is what makes Mediterranean cities unique, I think, creating these spaces. No? And I think urban planning needs to ensure that we can continue to enjoy, to play or rest in the public space. that is the reasoning behind every new project, urban project that we do in Barcelona. And perhaps the most iconic is the one on the right. The one on the left is the promenade at the seafront that was talking about it earlier. And the one on the right is Plaza de las Glorias, the Glorias Square. This square used to be an urban highway with 8 lanes for cars. So there were nothing more than cars. And the city council started transforming it in 2007. And we are now finishing its transformation. It has become a new green park, as you can see, of over 18 hectares, which is now used by many residents on the area, but not only in the area, also the whole city, to do sports, play, or simply sunbathe or rest. The park will be crossed by the tram and surrounded by new buildings of social housing and also public facilities such as a library or a kindergarten. And these buildings will bring the park to life, because I think we need to ensure it becomes a new centrality in our city. It's the very right side, the east side of the city. And I think the Las Glorias, this square, is the perfect example of how citizen, but also political determination, because there was a citizen movement asking for this transformation, and then political determination can transform what seemed untouchable, from a highway to thriving green space for all the citizens.
And we see it's not just about mobility; it's also about the space, which is it speaks also to the campaign we see. It's about what you do with the space you will free from car. And I don't know if you want to react.
I think the third part.
Yeah, you will show some example, and maybe just one thing, because I think the connection between the shop, the active ground floor and the public space. The urbanist Jane Jacob, from 7 years ago, called the active ground floor the A's of the street. It's like the connection between the public space and the business. And we have seen, and I think it's Barcelona actually who did some study on how actually transforming the public space, it's also helping the business to thrive, because you attract footfall and everything, how this combination is working and how you work on this combination. I don't know if...
Yes, actually one of our flagships initiatives in Barcelona to attract what we call foot traffic and strengthen local businesses is the revitalization of a very important street, probably you know it, Las Ramblas in Barcelona. It's a next in the old city in Barcelona. So if you have ever been in Barcelona, probably you have visited Las Ramblas. The problem with La Ramblas in singular or plural, because there are many, but it's a unique street, is that even if it's one of our most loved streets, it has increasingly become, let's say, less attractive for the residents in Barcelona, for local people. It has become an attraction for tourists, and therefore the businesses have also changed. So what happens on the surrounding area, it has changed a lot, and now we mostly have restaurants and souvenir shops. And this was not Barcelona, this was not Las Ramblas. This is why we decided to accelerate the transformation of Las Ramblas. We need to transform the skin, let's say, as a first step, with the goal of completing this transformation just in 3 years, instead of the initial 6 years timeline that we have. We will renew the street to give more space to pedestrians, to make it greener. Also, we have to improve and take advantage of every single transformation to greener the city. But the most important thing probably about this transformation will be not the physical changes, not the transformation of the skin of La Ramblas. We aim at transforming what happens on top of this physical transformation. We want our neighborhoods to feel like La Rambla is theirs again, because it's true. I live in Barcelona. I was not born in Barcelona, but I live in Barcelona since 35 years. And before this transformation, I could probably avoid La Ramblas for 2 years because it was not interesting what happened there. So we want to boost local businesses. That is why we are working on a new use plan. We use also planning, use plans to regulate what kind of activities will be allowed in this area, in La Rambla. And in the meantime, when we are transforming it, we are not giving any licenses for new businesses to open, so that we can stop the evolution, this bad evolution of the businesses that we had there. So I think to make cities vibrant, we need diversity, and we need mixed uses. We need businesses, we need public facilities, we need housing, we need public spaces, and we have to guarantee all that in the same area. If a street ends up being just for tourists, probably we lose that street for the city and for the citizens. And that was, it happened with La Rambla, and I hope we can have the essence of La Rambla back when we finish this transformation.
Vibrant again. Any comment from Giancarlo or Maro on this element of how cities support the local commerce, which is also very important in the neighborhood?
The local commerce?
Yeah, the commerce, the amenities.
Yeah, not in the surfaces. The legal surface. Sorry. The local commerce is not in the legal surface. I don't know the English word, but is free to urbanism tax, yeah. And this is one of the support that we can do.
The local commerce
what we were saying is that the fact that in the neighborhood, the fact that you will transform your public space, I think what Laia was explaining, is also going to shape the type of commerce, and the other way around, how the commerce is also influencing the use of the space, and how, as a city, you want to develop this proximity planning, you act on the public space transformation, but what type of tool you could also make from land use, from permit, or support to the commerce to also help, like key commerce to...
One of the things we are trying to do in this occasion, because it's one of our poor competences, is to decide that some streets will not have the right to have tables and seats outside. Mm-hmm. So you influence the kind of commerce will be inside. You know, the coffees, they cannot open the streets since they will not. Because you cannot, we don't have the competence to say stop the coffee shops, because it's allowed. So, and the license procedure is really very simple. You just announce. This is after the Troika. It's one of the reforms. Yes, you just announce that now you have a coffee shop here, and you have the right to have music at the same time. The only thing you can control is the time of the music stops. It's a decision, nothing else. So another instrument to control is to tell that in some streets you are not allowed to have tables and seats. How do you say? So I think it will be
So to limit
a kind of limit.
of
It's not easy to be accepted,
okay,
even by people. People is used to use the public space as as client than as user. But anyway, I think this will change. It's one of the first things we have to change.
Maybe to close the session, we wanted just to finish by each of the city highlighting a few key projects in your cities. I come back, and maybe starting with Milano and Ex-Macello.
Yes, I have two slides. And Ex-Macello is in the historic area of the former slaughterhouse, one of the most important city regeneration projects, featuring new architectures and the recovery of historical evidence of the site's industrial architecture. It will be the largest social housing district in the city, approximately 1,000 units and 400 student beds. And the project is the result of Reinventing Cities C40 competition. Also includes the new headquarters of the European Institute of Design of Milan and a new museum on sustainability and digital innovation. And the other project is by Renzo Piano and Bovisa Goccia, the area that housed the city's gas plant, that you can see, with the historic gasometers of industrial Milan. We'll see the extensions of the Bovisa campus of the Polytechnic of Milan, which will accommodate 40,000 students, and an additional 4,000 students from the Civic Schools Foundation, that are the civic school of the municipality. And 24 hectares of the area will be dedicated to enhancing the existing greenery, a public park that will also serve as an environmental remediation of the soil.
Let's see, Barcelona. What are the key new projects that are happening?
So instead of project, I will talk about policies, because it's probably the most important policy that we have now in Barcelona, and I would say not only in Barcelona, which is housing. I think when we talk about urban regeneration, if there is a priority, this priority is housing. Access to affordable housing is today one of the causes of inequality that affects not only the most vulnerable groups, but also the working middle class and obviously the young people. The price of housing is disconnected from income levels, which makes it impossible for our citizens to access affordable housing. This is causing a lot of social discomfort across Spain. Probably you have heard about demonstrations the last days about housing, the problems of access to housing. To protect, so we need, and people is asking for measures to protect tenants, to lower rental prices. And I think access to housing should not be a market commodity. It should be protected as a fundamental right. It should be the basis for a cohesive city that puts well-being at the center. That is why we made housing our main priority in Barcelona for the coming years. We are building 5,000 new public housing units and have made land available to the regional government, to other governments, and housing cooperatives, so that they can also build social housing in our spots. Within the framework of the Spanish housing law, we have applied a cap on rental prices throughout the city, which has caused prices to fall by 5% in the second quarter of this year. I think it's important to have the context. Over the past 10 years, the rental prices have increased 68% in Barcelona, so decreasing 5% is a lot. But we need to go further. And we are also working on regenerating housing buildings in vulnerable areas. We are currently testing 3 innovative prototypes that will help us regenerate buildings in a more agile way. We have managed to limit the growth of tourist flats, and we now have 10,000 tourist flats across the city. We are also pursuing and sanctioning in a very inflexible, I have to say, way, the illegal activity of tourist flats in Barcelona. However, we realize that it's not enough, as I said. It's not enough just limiting tourist flats. That is why we decided that by 2029, we will have no more tourist flats in Barcelona, with the aim of recovering these 10,000 flats used now for visitors to the housing needs of the people that needs to live. Now we are focusing on regulating seasonal rentals, which are those that last more than 1 month and less than 1 year, because these kind of rentals are withdrawing regular rentals from the housing market, and we simply cannot allow this to happen. So housing is the basis for livable cities. It is the basis that makes it possible for our residents to continue to live in our cities and to continue to have hope in the future for those who have born in Barcelona or have chosen to live in Barcelona, and that they are expelled by the presence of our housing market.
So pushing the construction of housing and at the same time trying to fight under occupancy and everything. That I think it's a challenge that a lot of cities are facing. Maybe over to you, Maro, also about
projects. One is named Leonas. Leonas means olive tree camp, but you don't see any olive tree. I guess it used to be the olive tree camp in the center of Athens, in between the 2 rivers, Kifissos and Ilissos, so it was a good area to be cultivated, but it was transformed in industrial area, which is completely private, and but it was a good area where big properties are there, so it was a good area to plant things, to put interesting new infrastructure, but we have had the NIMBYism phenomenon, and the idea was to make much green spaces. So this is the plan of late 90s, I think, or beginning 2000, and those are the green spaces wished to be created. Most of them are in public spaces, in military ones. And the idea was to keep the industry, the purple, and the rose with other uses, the blue is the school of agriculture. So it's already a good area. This is an area which is included with other two municipalities at the same time. But anyway, I'm speaking only for Athens. So the big project which arrived is the gray area, which is the stadium. Yes, the stadium is always, and it has been accepted. I don't know why. All the other things, the mosque, for example, was not accepted, but the stadium was accepted by locals because Panathinaikos is a power, you know, our team. And so the big project running now is this: how to create. What is interesting is that how to create the green areas and the Panathinaikos Stadium at the same time. And the big problem is that we still need to expropriate, although this area was urbanized with the new law that that owners had to concede a part. But I don't want to say details, but it didn't happen completely. So we have problems, but we are trying. The second project I should like to tell you is the Metropolitan Park of Goudi, which is another brownfield, but not really brownfield because there are also hospitals, but the central is an army, an ex-military zone. And it comes between the mountain of Imitos and the city, so it was considered like a green wedge to bring the fresh area and so on. So it's important, if you see in city, how it's important to create this metropolitan park. But the first step on 77 was a law to transfer the property to the municipalities, which did not advance because the military wanted also to have a part to build for the officers, a housing for the officer, which couldn't advance because it was a forestry area. So it stopped the transforming of the ownership. It stopped in a way. But as you see, this is the cadastre. Let's say that we don't have the cadastre in Greece. We're just creating it now. So here you see all the properties of the. There are too many public properties. So we have a presidential decree saying that you cannot build, but the way you don't build is not obvious. We have still to open the fences to stop the cars in the side, and it's what we are trying. We will try to do. We're trying to do in a way. Those are some parts of the park well designed and well. How do you say? Done.
Designed, realized. Designed, realized.
Realized. Yes, they are realized. Some of them by, for example, there is a church who wants to make weddings, but there are some others here. It's a pity because it was awful, the kids of the other picture. So the two things you see, there are privatized practically by the army because they just rent. And they rent normally keeping the presidential decree which says not to build. But even if they don't build, they build illegally and have to run after. But anyway, we have a kind of, let's say the land use is respected because it's amusement. But what kind of amusing, what kind of building and the aesthetic level that is required from this for this public space so important is not kept. Anyway, the other big problem, just to show you, because I was thinking about listening your discussion about the infrastructure reused for to make parks, And here we have a park used by the infrastructure. I don't know if I can. The big area on the left of the road, it's the provisory metro installation, but if you believe that it will be provisory, it has 7 levels ground, and it will be, but it's not yet legalized. It will be a stand of reparation of wagons and so on. So it's a project that we want to work on it. It's a project that needs a collaboration with many state agencies, and I hope we'll do it, and I hope that we will arrive in a good level of design of this so important park, which is already used by people. The part opened is already used, but the other half is just a parking lot.
It's a project for the future.
Yes, it's one of the projects that will be, I think, it will be important and good, but okay, let's.
Thank you. I think time for the aperitivo.
Hélène, let me thank you. Let me thank you, Maro. Let me thank you, Laia, for being here, for participating to this little but very interesting conference. And thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting us.